I'm going to take that as the cue that we are ready to start. So, welcome everyone. I hope that you are all having a wonderful first day at Tableau Conference. Everybody doing well? Nice, excellent. I am Stephanie Potter. I'm a senior product manager in the development organization at Tableau, and I have the amazing privilege of welcoming you all and our speakers to a talk. These speakers, you get the awesome value of 2 Zens for the price of 1 session. So, we have Matt Chambers, who it turns out has a superhero alter ego, Sir Visalot. He is also a dedicated Clemson football fan who has a day job as the director of analytics at Clemson. Convenient that. He has done some amazing things for Tableau community lately. Over the past year, he has built a user group in Greenville, South Carolina, and he has written a series of blogs that are all dedicated to showing you how to use different chart types to expand your options as you're trying to present different types of data. They're really cool. Joining him on stage is Ken Flerlage, who unfortunately doesn't seem to have revealed his superhero alter identity. We'll have to work on that later in the conference. But what we do know about Ken is that he has a day job as the business intelligence architect at Bucknell. And he also writes a blog, which for those of us who do not come from the IT side of the world, has been very useful, because his most recent series of blogs has been about how to use SQL for Tableau if you are not an IT whiz. So, I loved it. It was a very good read. I highly recommend it. These 2 data gurus are here to talk to you today about the myriad of possibilities that exist within data visualization. They want to inspire you and bring you new ideas about how you can take data and turn it into a beautiful piece of art that people can see and use and understand. And in this case, they're going to go beyond the standard charts that are in the Show Me box. And so I am really thrilled to welcome to the stage Matt and Ken. Go get them, guys.
Appreciate it. So I'm Ken. I'm going to get us started off here today. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining us. This is a really tough time slot. There are really, really fantastic sessions at this time. So thank you so much for choosing this one and spending the next hour with us. Right next door are Andy and Jeff Schaefer, 2 other Zen masters. So we told them we wanted this competition to where who would get the loudest crowd. So if you see something that you like, let us know about it, all right? Sound good? All right. So, as Stephanie mentioned, we're going to talk about going beyond Show Me. So hopefully what we'll be able to do is give you a few techniques that allow you to kind of step outside of the box and do some different types of charts than maybe you're used to. And also give you some examples of some things we can do, right? So let's jump right into it. So everyone in this room uses Tableau, right? So everyone's probably pretty familiar with the Show Me panel. That's the Show Me over there on the right-hand side of the screen, right? So let's zoom in on that. So what is Show Me? Show Me is a series of 24 sort of out-of-the-box charts that you can build in Tableau. And you don't really need the Show Me panel to build these charts, but it's more sort of a wizard that allows you to sort of throw a few things on there and quickly get that chart. And you can see at the bottom there, it shows you the number of dimensions and measures and dates. And once you throw those on your view somewhere, you click on one of these charts and you have it. And there's a reason why Tableau has chosen these 24 charts to be included in Show Me. And it's because, for most of your needs, they're going to tend to meet those needs, one of these chart types. But there are times where these don't quite meet your needs, or you need to do something a little bit more, something a little bit more custom. And that's what we want to talk about today, and we want to take you through step by step how you do that. So Before we jump into that, let me back up and I'll give you a little bit of my background and how I sort of came to a discovery, at least my own discovery of how to build these charts. So I started at Bucknell University about 2.5 years ago. And before starting there, I learned that they use Tableau. So I had never used Tableau before. I had worked with similar products in the past, so I figured that was one thing that I can take a little bit of time, do an online course, and learn Tableau so that I could hit the ground running when I went in. So I did an online course taught by a gentleman named Matt Francis. I'll plug his course. He's actually speaking in this time slot as well. And so learned the basics of Tableau, learned, dimensions and measures and all those kinds of things. And then I started at Bucknell ready to go with Tableau and jumped right into a data warehouse architect project. So we didn't actually do anything with Tableau. At least I didn't do anything with Tableau for 6 to 8 months or so. So I had these new skills and I wanted to use them. So I had this idea of, saw some data that was interesting and I wanted to analyze it and maybe write about it and maybe put together some visuals that kind of show my insights. And I thought, well, why not use Tableau, right? I needed to learn it. I was going to use it at work eventually, right? I also knew Tableau could be embedded in a website very easily, so it seemed like an appropriate tool. And I wanted to do some maps, and I had never previously seen a tool that did maps quite as well as Tableau. So I thought, let's give it a try. And so I started doing these blogs and getting excited about what I was building. Mostly simple charts, mostly using Show Me, lots of line charts and bar charts, which are great. Not bashing line and bar charts, they're pretty solid charts. But then I saw this infographic. So let me show this here. I saw this infographic by the National Post, and it shows the world's religious traditions. And in the middle, we see that big black bubble, and that's the world's population. This is about 5 or 6 years old, so I'm sure it's changed but since then. But that's the whole world population. And then it moves out in this sort of hierarchical fashion. So we see the blue down at the bottom. Those represent the Abrahamic religions. So the big blue bubble is all the different Abrahamic religions all together. And then you can't really see this because it's small. But as we get into smaller and smaller bubbles, we see Islam and Judaism and Christianity, and then we break it out further from there. So I saw this, and I thought it was gorgeous. I thought it was a great way to show this information on one sort of screen. And I wanted to be able to build this. But when I went back to Show Me, that's the wrong one. I looked at Show Me, and I thought, well, how can I build this with Show Me? And the closest thing I could see here is this bubble chart in the bottom right-hand corner. But bubble charts, it automatically places those. So I couldn't really figure out how to put those bubbles right where I wanted to. So I kind of shelved the idea for a little bit. But as I kept thinking about it, I started to come to this unfortunate realization. And it was a wrong realization, but I came to this realization that Tableau was great for these simple charts, line charts and bar charts and pie charts. If you need to do some of those basic things, go for it. But I felt like to do these custom charts, I really had no choice. I was going to have to go learn how to write code. I was going to have to go learn D3, the JavaScript library, in order to do these fully custom visualizations. And I was disappointed about that, but kind of excited to learn something new. So I started down that path of learning D3. But as I was doing it, I continued doing the blogs, continued analyzing data and visualizing those results in Tableau. And then my kids were at an age where they were in school and they were studying the periodic table. So they were asking questions about it, and they had a paper copy, and I really wanted something more interactive. So I went online and searched for an interactive periodic table. And I wanted something more than just this standard periodic table. I wanted to be able to hover over the elements and see who discovered it, when they were discovered, those types of things. And I couldn't find anything online. It was frustrating. I thought, boy, I wish I could build that in Tableau. I could use Tableau's interactive features to do that. But once again, I went back to Show Me, and I didn't see how I could possibly build this type of chart in Tableau. So I thought about it, and I pondered that problem. And then all of a sudden I had this sort of aha moment where it all came to me on how we could build that. And I just want to take you through the thought process of what I came up with. We're actually going to build this here in just a moment as well. So if we take this periodic table and just push it to the background, make it a little bit gray here, we can then draw a grid around this. So this looks like a piece of graph paper or something like that that we all use in high school, right? And each element fits nicely into that grid, right? We can then add an X and Y axis to this. So now we have, a Cartesian plane. So I think all of us remember using this in math class in high school to plot points and things like that, right? So once we have an X and Y axis, we can then assign actual coordinates to each of these elements. So we can see here actinium down at the bottom left is at X coordinate of 3, Y coordinate of Y. We've got tungsten there at 6 and 4, and helium at 18 and 9. So I realized I could sit here and manually sort of figure out each and every position, each and every coordinate for these elements. So I did that. I sat down and sort of painstakingly built this data source here. So each of my elements, my X and Y coordinates for each of those elements. And then I built it in Tableau. So let me open up a new workbook here. We're going to build this here live. All right, so connected to my data set. Switch over to a sheet. So here are my X and Y coordinates. I'm going to drag X up to columns, Y to rows. And so Tableau has seen these and is guessing that they're measures. So it's automatically aggregating these. But essentially what we've built is a scatter plot. All right, we've got an X-axis and a Y-axis on a scatter plot. Because it's summing these, we only get the one dot, right? So I'm just going to drag name onto detail. And hopefully, you're already starting to see the basic shape of the periodic table, right? So let's fit this to the entire view. I'm going to change our marks from circles to squares. Increase the size just a bit. Okay, now it's starting to look more like a periodic table, right? So the periodic table, it's usually colored by the element type. And so that happens to be on my data set. So I'm going to drag type to color. And so we get this breakdown of the different element types. And then finally, we'll drag symbol to the label. We will increase the size a bit. And then let's center it. And now we have a periodic table. Thank you. All right, so here's my final periodic table that I built. I like to claim that it was for the kids, but so you can hover over it and get that additional information that I was looking to get. So if you've done this before with Tableau, and I think a lot of people in the room probably have, but if you've done this before, this is probably like, yeah, okay, I know how to do that. But for me, 3 or 4 months into using Tableau, this was just a revelation. Because what I realized was, if I can do this, if I can figure out X and Y coordinates, then I can draw anything. I've heard people refer to Tableau as a data-driven drawing tool, and that's really what it is. If you can figure out those points and you can plot them, you can draw lines, you can draw polygons, then there's really no limit to what you can do. In fact, the only limitation is really your own imagination. So I threw away the D3 books and said, I'm just doing all Tableau at this point. There's really nothing I can't do with this platform. However, there's one sort of problem with this approach. And the problem is that it required me to manually figure out those X and Y coordinates, right? So there are times where we want to sort of automate this process. And to automate the process, what we really need to do is introduce a little bit of math. So specifically, we're talking about trigonometry and geometry. So I've given this talk, or at least my part of the talk, a couple of times before. And this is a point where people start to get nervous and their eyes roll back in their head and the math is scaring everybody. We're not going to get into the details of the math. At the end, we'll give you some resources, and there's some things on our blog that kind of go through this. But I do just want to reassure you, the math isn't too difficult for this. And it's not theoretical, it's practical, and it really makes sense when you really get into it. So don't be too scared of the math, but it is really powerful to be able to automate these calculations. So let me give you an example of this. So one thing that trigonometry is really good for is drawing circles. So this is a very simple data set, has 100 points, and I've just used trigonometric calculations, formulas, cosines and sines, to figure out the x and y coordinates of each of these dots and evenly space them around the circle. So other than building that data set of 100 points, this is all 100% automated calculations. So kind of neat, I guess, right? Let's keep going. So we can actually, as you know in Tableau, we can change the mark type. So if I change the mark type to a line, now I get a solid line circle like this. I can also change the line type to a polygon as well. So then we get this sort of filled grayish circle here. All right, so you're looking at me thinking, okay, that's kind of neat, but why in the world would I ever want to use that? So I'm going to take this polygon, and I'm going to throw it down in the left-hand corner of the screen. And then I'm going to layer in a couple of other polygons, a couple other circles. And then I'm just going to run this here and let it go. So this data set, kind of a combination of the techniques we talked about. I've got x and y coordinates of the centers of each of these circles, and then using trigonometric calculations to sort of find the edges of the circles and then fill them in with the polygon. And if I stall long enough, hopefully this will start to look like something familiar. So if you see it, just yell it out. All right, that's a quick one. We'll give it a minute. Computer's a little slow. So it's Starry Night. Starry Night that we've built by just drawing circular polygons and layering them over top of each other. So, I mean, this is not maybe a practical example, but this is an example where we have taken data, we've added in some math, we've added it to Tableau, and we've created art, right? So you might be questioning what the value of doing that would be. Certainly you can make the argument about the value of art that it has to our society. I'm not going to talk about that. What I would just say is that anytime you're using Tableau, you're learning it. And when you do things like this that are maybe a little bit off the beaten path, then you're really sort of exploring the edges of this platform and understanding how it thinks and how it works at a very low level of detail. So anything you can do to experiment, if you like art, use this as a platform to build that. And then as you're doing it, you're building those skills. If you like sports, grab some sports data. Matt's a huge sports fan, does lots of sports visualizations. Grab some sports data and do it. If you like literature, grab some literature data and start analyzing it. And so you're practicing, you're having fun at the same time, and you're really getting a deep understanding of the platform. All right, so let me give you a couple examples of where Matt and I have used these techniques. So let me switch over here. So that world of religion chart I showed earlier, as soon as I kind of came up with this discovery, and I'm not the first to make this discovery, there lots of other people did it before me, but once I figured that out, I immediately went back and built this in Tableau. So I just basically figured out the x and y coordinates of each of these bubbles, sized the bubbles by the number of adherents to that religious tradition, and plotted it in Tableau. So I think it looks quite a bit like the original. I recently learned that there are some 46 million people in the world living in slavery. And I was shocked by that number. So I went and got this data set from the Global Slavery Index that tracks this. And one of the things they do is they look at a handful of different things that governments can do to help reduce that. So I wanted to kind of help, use whatever small platform I had to bring some attention to this. So I built these little sort of flower things for each country. And the middle dot is the proportion of the country that's living in a state of modern slavery. And then the petals around are those 5 things, that governmental actions. So smaller and yellower are bad. Means they have a lot to do to prevent slavery. And larger and purpler or bluer, if I scroll down, you see some of those. Those indicate that those countries are putting in place a lot of those legislation. So the placement of the petals is all done with trigonometry, just figuring out where to put those equally around a circle. And then the placement of the countries and how they're laid out is just using some basic geometry. Next example I've got for you here. So I saw this album cover that looked something like this. And I just had to recreate it in Tableau. I just thought it was so cool. So what this is showing is it's the first 5,000 digits of pi. So the digits of pi are wrapped around a circle, so starting at 0 all the way around to 9. And it starts out at, pi starts at 3. So it draws a curve from 3 to the next number of pi, which is 1, and that back down to 4, and then keeps on doing that for the first 5,000 digits of pi, and creates this kind of really pretty, nice little artwork. Again, all done using Tableau and trigonometry. And the last thing is a fun one. I draw circles a lot with Tableau. There's lots of circles you can see here. So I came to this, I came up with this idea that if I took a bunch of circles and stacked them on top of each other and made them smaller as we get around, that we could basically sort of approximate a sphere by doing that. So I stacked a bunch of circles on top of each other, colored them a little bit, and created this little moving eyeball. So all with Tableau, just a bunch of circles that are drawn using trig. And add a little bit of animation, and we have this rolling eyeball. And I'm going to let Matt speak to the next one. This is a personal project of his that he'll go into for you.
Thanks, Ken.
I'm coming back. I'm not done yet.
So first I just have to ask, do I have any Clemson Tiger fans out here? Oh, we got a few. All right, so as Stephanie mentioned earlier, I'm a huge Clemson Tiger fan. Clemson's been a big part of my life. Went to Clemson, I work for Clemson, so this was really fun personal project to actually work on. But when I was a kid, I got to go to a few Clemson games. It was always really exciting, especially coming from a really small town. I grew up in a town of about 200 people, so we actually had more cows than people. And so going to Clemson was like going to a major city for the first time. And so that really gave me that kind of attachment to Clemson at a young age. And I remember going to games with my friend, and he had a poster in his room, and it said Clemson won the national championship in 1981. And at the time, I just thought that was so weird because at the time, Clemson was not very good. And that was actually before I was born. So I always said if Clemson somehow made it back to the national championship that I would do whatever I could to get to the game. And I was actually fortunate enough to go to both games and actually see the win against Alabama in 2017. So I wanted to build something to commemorate that game, but also something that was kind of reminiscent of that poster that I saw when I was a kid. I wanted this to be able to be printed as a poster. And so what I built is a type of chart called a drive chart. So this is actually a very old type of data visualization. It's been around for about 100 years. But we can actually see every play of the game. So each point here is the starting and ending position of the play. And if I hover over it, we can see the actual play-by-play. And so on the x-axis, we have the field position. On the y-axis, we have time. So as we scroll down, time is advancing in the game. And so we can see the score change here as the game moves along. Whoop, had a little refresh there. And we can see the back and forth at the end of the game leading up to the win by Clemson at the end. So another thing I built into it is that we can highlight specific playmakers. So if we want to see every play that Deshaun Watson was in on, we can click Deshaun's name and it will show us every play that he was in. But probably my favorite feature of this is if we click on the actual play, it goes to the actual footage. So I never get tired of seeing that. I probably watched it like 1,000 times. And so, like I said, this was a personal project for me. I was able to see something that I never thought I would see in my lifetime, which is Clemson in the national championship. I was actually able to be there, and then I was actually able to build something to commemorate this. And I actually did print this out as a poster for my son's bedroom, so it was a pretty cool project in the end. And so I'll give it back to Ken to go through a few more practical applications, and then I'll be back later for some custom mapping.
Thanks, Pat. All right, so far the examples we've given have been just fun things, right? And I do want to encourage you to have fun with Tableau. There's no reason you have to just deal with boring data all the time. So if you love data, go find some good data and do something cool with it. But there are some practical examples, right? I'm going to do a couple of practical examples, and then I'm going to hand it over to Matt, and he's going to jump into a bunch of really cool things you can do with maps as well. So one practical example, and this is an actual example from Bucknell University. So this shows a Sankey chart. So a Sankey shows flow, so you can kind of see the life cycle of certain things, but rather than try to explain what it does in words, I'm just going to show you with this example. So this shows our natural physical sciences division of the university, and it's based off of some survey data that we send out to our graduates. So we look at what they've studied, and we ask them what industries they're working in after they've graduated. So this shows, on the left, it shows the majors that these students graduated with, and on the right, we have the actual industries. So I can hover over one of these and say, well, I've got 2,200 and so biology graduates, and then I can see how that sort of flows into how many of those are, say, working in health and medicine. So about half of them in health and medicine. So I can see each of these sort of flows and just kind of understand where our students are going after they've graduated. I can also look backwards as well. Say, look at banking and finance, and I can see, well, a big chunk of those are actually coming from biology as well. So we do have students that are getting into slightly different industries than what they studied. So this is really, to me, this is the best use case I've ever seen for Sankey. They can be misused, but there are times when they're a really, really valuable and powerful kind of chart. Another example is a sunburst. So sunburst is a hierarchical chart. Since we've already dealt with the religion data, I just took that data and put it in here as well. So the way a sunburst works is the inner circle is kind of your highest level of your hierarchy. So here we have the major religious traditions, Abrahamic, Eastern Dharmic, etc. And then the next level, it starts to get into a little bit more detail. So we have Islam, Judaism, Christianity. And then as we go out further, it just keeps breaking it down into more and more detail. So this is an alternate way to visualize the data that we showed earlier. There are often better ways to show historical or hierarchical data than something like this. But depending on your use case, this might work out well. And there's actually science behind the fact that humans really are just drawn to circles. So there's something just very visually appealing and drawing about this kind of thing. So again, maybe not always the best use case, but in certain cases, it might be a good chart type for you. Oop, I went too far. Or, if you just rather have fun with it, you can use it to build some art. So I'm just going to let this run here. We're just drawing straight lines across. It's a circle, so there's some trig involved, and we're just drawing some straight lines connecting the lines across. And if I stall long enough again. If anybody recognizes this is not quite as easy as the, if you recognize the call out. So this is Afghan Girl. Thank you. This is Afghan Girl. It was a famous photograph from 1984 by Stephen McCurry, and it was on a cover of a National Geographic magazine. So again, a little bit of trigonometry and some geometry to draw this, right? All right, I'm going to hand over to Matt, and Matt's going to do some really, really cool things with maps for you.
Thanks, Ken. So Ken did a really great job of explaining how we can take advantage of using X and Y coordinates to be able to build custom charts. So I'm going to take some of those same techniques and show you how we can create custom maps and what their practical applications are and when they're useful. So in Tableau, pretty much everyone here has built a basic field map at some point. It's really simple to do. All we need to do is just double-click our state and double-click our profit in this case, and we get a basic field map. So this is very effective for communicating data when geography is part of what we're trying to communicate. But there might be times when we want to communicate data in a different way using different types of maps, and it may be that geography is really not even part of what we're trying to communicate. So the first type of custom map that I want to look at is tile maps. And so tile maps were actually created by Brittany Fong. And this was one of the kind of light bulb moments for me, like Ken mentioned, when I first saw this type of map and I realized how she had actually created these. It really opened up a whole new world for me to be able to make new types of charts in Tableau. So if we look at what Brittany did, I'll bring in the data here so we can see what the underlying data is like on this. So if I have my state here, so you basically have a row and a column for every state. So that's basically what's going to tell Tableau how to position the tiles in the visualization. So we'll build this. So we're just going to drag our columns in, drag our rows in. And you notice it's upside down at this point. That's because we need 0 to be at the top because of the way it's mapped. So we're just going to reverse our axis. We're going to put our abbreviations on. And then I want to bring in some data from Superstore so that we can color by our profit. So I'm going to do a blend here and turn that on. And then we get our tile map colored by profit from Superstore. So I'm just going to hide my headers, and then when I bring that in, we get a complete tile map. And so like I said, thank you. So like I said, once I saw that Brittany had done this, it really inspired me to look at different types of custom maps. So I was looking at like different ways of laying out tile maps, and I found hex maps. And I just really like the appeal of this. I like the way the hexagons tessellate. It just has a nice look. So I did the same thing Brittany did. I just figured out how to lay the coordinates out. And so we'll build this the exact same way. We'll just bring in our columns and our rows, and we'll have to reverse our axis. Put our abbreviation on, and once again, we're going to use our blend on Superstore. Whoop. Oh, that's the wrong Superstore. There's 2 of them in here. Okay. Got to turn my blend back on. Live builds, y'all. It's tough. All right, so we're back in business. So once I put that in my dashboard and I have it sized, then we get that nice look there with the tile map, the hex map. So this was pretty much the way people built hex maps for around 2 years, but a couple people from the community, Joshua Milligan and Luke Stanky, who's right there, they figured out how to take what I had done and build it into a shapefile. And so once Tableau had shapefile support, this makes it extremely easy now. So all we have to do is just literally double-click our geometry, and we get the shape there. And then we can just bring in our label. And once again, once we add our blend, we get colored by the profit there in that case. So we don't have to do any custom sizing or anything on that one. It's already built. It already has that nice look and that tessellation there. So I want to talk about a few practical applications of these types of charts. So this is a visualization I built to show the issue with gun violence in the United States, primarily the issue with gun suicides and how they're increasing over time. And so I wanted the user to be able to connect to the story by being able to click on their state. So in this case, I can click on South Carolina because that's where I'm from. And I can see that the gun suicides are trending up over time while homicides are pretty much flat in this case. But the problem with this is we have to have Alaska in the view, which causes the map to zoom extremely small in the United States. And so trying to click on anything in the Northeast is pretty much impossible. I don't think I can even click on Rhode Island in this example. And so if I take this exact dashboard and swap that field map out for a hex map, then we get a completely different user experience. The states are really easy to see. I can easily see Rhode Island. I can click it. And in this case, it's more about building a user interface element than it is about geography. I'm not necessarily communicating anything about the United States from a regional perspective. I just want the user to be able to have an idea of where their state is and to be able to click on it. And that hex maps aren't perfectly geographically accurate, but most people know the vicinity of where their state would be. So in that case, in my opinion, it's a much better user interface element for a dashboard than using the field maps there. And so the next thing I want to look at are area tile maps. So what I built here is a dashboard that shows Republican and presidential voting over 50 years. So we can see every state, what percent voted Republican and what percent voted Democrat. And so if we look at how this is built out, when I originally built it, I was going to actually build all of these little small multiple charts and arrange them all on a dashboard. And that would have been extremely tedious. But once I actually built it, I just realized if I just make an area chart that has all the data, and then I bring in my columns and rows from my tile map, then Tableau will automatically know how to build it for me and lay everything out. So I don't actually have to do any of that manual work to create this. Tableau knows where to put each area chart based on what's in the tile map file. Thank you. So this is another example using the area tile maps. This is the most visited national park in each state. And I thought it was really cool to see how many people come to the Blue Ridge Parkway in North Carolina. When you think about national parks, you pretty much think of Yellowstone or Golden Gate Bridge or any of these other places, Grand Canyon, that are much more popular. And it's crazy to see how many people actually visit the Blue Ridge Parkway in North Carolina. But I looked into it, and actually what it is, if you know anything about that area, you know there's a road called the Tail of the Dragon. It's actually a road through the mountains, and people take sports cars and motorcycles there just to go on that road. So they actually count everyone that's driving through. So they're not actually visiting that parkway, but they're just driving their cars and they count that. So I thought that was interesting to see that visualized. And the next thing I want to cover are density maps. So this is a data set that looks at tornadoes from 1950 to 2015. And if we pull in that data into a field map, pretty much looks like tornadoes only happen in Texas. The reason why this is because Texas is the largest landmass. So when you aggregate at that level, then it looks like tornadoes really only happen in Texas. But we know that's not true because we have Tornado Alley and Dixie Alley that are the two most prominent tornado locations. The same thing happens if we do a symbol map. We just have a lot of points. It just looks like tornadoes are everywhere. We can't create any density with this though because this is every single tornado. So I'll show you a few tricks that we can do this with. So first, this one's really simple, but you can essentially just round your latitude and longitude to create bends in your data. So you're going to create that density that you want. So I'm going to drag these on. And you see we get this kind of 16-bit looking Super Nintendo type map. And then I'm going to bring on my tornado count. So I'm going to count how many tornadoes there are. And I'm going to change my color palette. All right, and last thing I want to do is put my state on my tooltip so we can see these. All right, so I'm going to hide these, clean this up. And I'm going to pull it into my dashboard here. So now we get a much different picture than if we look at this map. So here we think tornadoes are only in Texas. But here we see these clusters in Oklahoma, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas here. So we can actually see a much different story. We can actually see Dixie Alley through here and Tornado Alley through here. And I was actually reading the other day that Dixie Alley is actually becoming a much more prominent location for tornadoes. So the tornadoes are actually shifting further east with what's happened with climate change. So we can actually see that in this picture. And there's an additional way we can do it as well. So we can actually use Tableau's built-in hex bin capability. So we can create our hex bins here. So basically it's going to bend the data into hexagon-based quadrants. So same way, we'll just build this exactly the same. Drag these in, put our count change our color palette. Clean up the chart, and then need to put my state on my tooltip. All right. And we can put that into our dashboard and we get a more granular view. This is more like pixelated. This is a little nicer and cleaner, but we can still see the same thing. We can see these pockets of tornadoes that we would never see in either one of these maps. So in this case, using this custom map is much better for communicating that data, because otherwise we wouldn't see it with the field map. So last thing I want to cover is layered shapefiles. So I'm not going to go through actually how to build these. You would mostly do this in QGIS or ArcGIS or some kind of GIS software. But I will show you like some of the examples of ways we can use this in Tableau. So being in South Carolina, we were in the direct path of the eclipse last year in 2017. And so we were really excited about being able to see that firsthand. And so I started looking at pulling in some data about the eclipse and shapefiles. And so this is a shapefile I created that has two layers. It's the United States and the eclipse's path across the country. And so here you can see this is all one shape. But if we just put our state on a detail, then these become, we can color these individually, and the eclipse's shadow becomes its own element as well. So what I want to do is create something that would also kind of commemorate that event, the eclipse. So I built this visualization using multiple layers, and you can see the states are shaded where the eclipse would cross, but you can also see that this is the eclipse's path at the exact moments that it was moving across the country. So what I did with some JavaScript, I actually built this to run on my site on the day of the eclipse, but every minute it would refresh the visualization, and you'd actually see the shadow move across the United States in real time at the exact same time as the eclipse's shadow was moving. So it was really cool to see that. As I was actually waiting on the eclipse to get to South Carolina that day, I could check my visualization and see how close it was. So here's another example using that same data, but this is using the Google search interest for the word eclipse. And, you know, anecdotally, we would think the states that were in the path of the eclipse would probably be the ones that search for that keyword the most. But it's just cool to actually see it visualized. The darker the state is, the more it was searched, and you can see it's perfectly on the line of the eclipse's path. Where is it? Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. So a couple things we want to leave you with, you know. So what do we hope you got out of this? So number one, you know, hopefully we've been able to show you kind of the basic tools and, you know, the foundational techniques that you need to be able to do these custom charts, you know, through use of X and Y coordinates and a little bit of math, right? We also hope that we've been able to give you some real-life practical examples of where and when you might use these types of charts and why they're valuable and powerful. And then finally, hopefully we've left you with a little bit of inspiration. I mean, hopefully some of this stuff is cool and it inspires you to go back and try some new things, whether it be at work or just in personal projects or whatever makes sense. So thank you for your time, and Matt.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Ken said, I hope I was able to help you go beyond Show Me and mapping. The biggest takeaway is just, I hope you understand that you can make whatever you want if you can get the data in the right shape, and using X and Y coordinates and math is ways that you can do that. So your creativity is really unlimited, and I hope you go out and use some of these techniques in the real world. And I also want to say that all of our how-to tutorials are on our site. Ken has a complete Beyond Show Me series on his blog, and then all of my tutorials for the custom maps are on my blog as well.
Yep. All right. So I think we have time for some questions. There are no microphones in the room, so should we just point at people, or do?
Yeah, I would say just point at people and then have them.
Oh, you do have a microphone.
Just speak loudly and then
We'll repeat the question. Right. So any questions? Yes. Yeah,
just
talk
speak-
really
just
loud.
speak loudly.
We'll repeat your question.
I was very interested when you mentioned the Sankey diagrams that you misused.
Yes.
I like Sankey. I plan to use them more, but I was wondering if you could elaborate on what a peril or issues might be.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the question is, I mentioned that Sankeys were often misused, and he's asking for basically for some examples of where Sankeys might be misused. Can you think of anything off the top of your head? I mean, they're so what I showed was, the change in one student. An example where they might not make sense, let's say if you had, everyone should be familiar with the Superstore data. So if you kind of looked at maybe like state on one side and then, I don't know, subcategory, there are relationships between those, but a Sankey probably isn't the best way to show that type of relationship in that example. Sankeys are really more for showing a change, within really sort of a single dimension or single subject matter.
Yeah.
Flow and yeah, exactly. Yep. And they're also, called flow diagrams is one of the other, ways that they're called. So. Yes. Right. So the question is data densification. So sometimes you have to kind of densify your data. You have to add. You got to create data where it doesn't exist to be able to draw certain types of things like lines and circles and curves and that kind of thing. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I would say I usually do that like in the ETL layer most of the time. I really don't densify data. Some people are really good at it in Tableau. They can use bins, and probably the Sankey diagram was using bins to densify, right?
Yeah.
To get that. So, but most of the stuff I do it like in the ETL flow.
I'm the same, Matt. You can do these things with, so that circle I drew, it had the data had 100 records. You can do that with bins, basically create that out of nothing. I find that it's actually, what you have to end up doing is using table calculations and more complex things that Tableau then has to churn through. So from a performance standpoint, I find it much better to push that back to the ETL, to the data layer as much as possible. Now, I don't do it in Excel. I try not to do it in Excel. I'd rather, use Tableau Prep or a real data prep tool so that you have an automated way of doing that. But whenever possible, I like to push it back as well.
Yep.
Sorry, the lights are bright. Any other questions? All right. Oh, there's one over there. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Come up a little bit.
It's leaving.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, before everyone leaves, please fill out the survey. I'm sure you heard this a million times, but the feedback really does help us and it helps Tableau, so we really appreciate your feedback. Positive feedback, please. Yeah, I think this is recorded.
It's recorded.
So the question was, at the enterprise level, if you're dealing with terabytes of data, how do you create visualizations like this?
Unclean data? Yeah, that's like the story of my life. That's like 80% of every project anyway. I always call data visualization the last mile. Once I get there, that's easy. But the ETL is like always the big size of it. I don't have any data sets in my day-to-day that are terabytes, like working in higher ed. My largest data set is probably about 23 million records. So,
That's same with me.
yeah, I'm not like an expert in that kind of large data sets like that. I would recommend like probably pushing it into Redshift or something.
Yeah, but that's really more of what we've shown here is that last mile that
Right.
Matt's talking about after the data has already been
Yeah.
structured. That is a bigger question for ETL and your data warehouse platform and and all those kinds of things. You know, so there's a lot more to that than what we've shown here. Yes? Yeah, so the question is embedding Tableau. If you go out and just search for embedding Tableau, Tableau it has a bunch of different ways to embed.
Right.
We both embed it into our website,
Yep.
and it's super easy to
Yeah.
embed it into the websites. If you're running Tableau server, you do have to, there are
Yeah.
some certain things like that. I mean, people have to have permissions to the Tableau server in order
Right.
to view those visualizations, and then you have things with like single sign-on and those
Yep.
kinds of things that you have to think about. But it is a really easy, I've never worked with a product that allows you to embed so easily.
There's a like SharePoint single sign-on pass-through or something. You can find that. I've seen the article before.
If you check the forums, there are
Yeah.
probably a bunch of answers on that, on the Tableau forums.
Yep.
Just curious, you use a lot of different visuals, a lot of different layers, but in the hex bins, I was in a class here and they showed how to do that. Can you build layers on hex bins so they can have 3 points of density that you don't have?
Yeah. He was asking whether you can layer hex bins on top of each other. I guess you could try to do some kind of like dual axis, but that would be only 2 layers. But even then, I'm not really sure like how it would handle that. You would need them to have like different positions, obviously, or you wouldn't even see the ones under the first layer. Yeah, it depends on like the ratio you use too. Like in the hex bin calculation, like you can define the ratio of how many points go into the hexagon bin. And so like you would need to play with that with each one to get them so that they're like staggered or whatever.
Here's a question.
Yeah. I think he's got a question right there, Ken.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I haven't done tricks since high school, so I was going to ask you, is the math part of your demonstrations or part of your work?
Yeah, so I always say the same thing. It's been 20, oh, sorry, the question is, thank you, Stephen. The question is, he said he hasn't used trig since high school. And so he's just asking where he can kind of, basically where you can get a refresher on that. So same with me. I had not used trigonometry since in 25 years since high school. 25 years, is that right? And until I realized how powerful it could be with Tableau. So for me, I just took the time and got myself kind of caught up. But I do have, so beyond Show Me, I've got a series, three-part series. The first part is really kind of the X and Y thing that I showed with the periodic table. The second one is all about trigonometry. So it goes step by step, what trig is, how it controls, determines the lengths of sides of triangles, and how you can then use that to draw curves and things like that. So it's meant for somebody who hasn't used it in many, many years to be able to just kind of get caught up and remember how to do it, and then specifically how to apply it within Tableau. Yep, it's part 2 of Beyond Show Me. Okay. Yeah.
And so the question was, if you're using country, city, state for the United States, or country, state, city for the United States, but you also have global data as well, you don't want to include the state on that.
Yeah, it's a tricky problem. It's the one I actually see a lot on the forums. And I'm sure there is a solution to it, but I haven't seen a great solution to it. I mean, one solution is to geocode your data ahead of time. So if you have a tool that will allow you to, you know, get the latitude and longitude, and a lot of ETL tools have that kind of capability built into them, then you could, you know, basically just come up with your coordinates ahead of time and then map them that way. That's one good approach. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I can't
I
think
don't
of
have
any
any easy
other
solutions
really
besides-
good approaches to that.
Yeah, I think geocoding is your best option in that
Yeah.
case.
And Tableau is great because it has this built-in geocoding database
Yeah.
where it does recognize cities and states and things like that. But it's not one. It doesn't have every location, every place, and every, you know, in every country. But yeah. And the problem is because you're putting that state on there that it throws off all the other countries. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the best solution is geocoding ahead of time if you've got a ability to do that. All right. One more. Thank you. So the question is, have we sold any of our visualizations?
When I did the football, when people wanted to buy it like as a poster, but it's very hard to get licensing for like team logos if you're not like doing that all the time. I actually looked into it. It was just like there's really no way. It was cost prohibitive for me to buy the licenses just to print posters.
Yeah, I think most of the time, I mean, what we're doing is for fun and to
Yeah.
learn and to challenge ourselves. I mean, everything we've shown is loaded up on Tableau Public, so it's there. And that Tableau Public, if you're not using it, check it out. I mean, it's an amazing free tool for learning Tableau. But what is even better is the community that's built up around it. So you want to download something that Matt's done and see how it was built, go download it. Go out to his Tableau Public page. Everything's downloadable there,
Yep,
pretty much,
yep, I
right?
have
Everything on my
everything
page is downloadable. And you can just really use that as a learning opportunity. So I think that tends to be, you know, we're just doing this for fun and to help this really cool community.
Yep.
Do we have time? Do we have to cut it out?
One more.
One more question, last question. A spider chart? Spider chart, same thing as a radar chart? Yeah, I'm in the middle of writing a blog on that one, actually. One of the tricky things, so he's asking if we've ever used, have you ever done a radar chart?
No, I usually use like parallel coordinates instead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, radar charts, it's one of those things that some people hate and some people love. Spider chart, radar chart. They are a little bit tricky to build. They do use these kinds of concepts. But hopefully, you know, if you keep an eye on my blog in the next couple of months, you might see a radar chart on there. And usually when I do things like that, I try to templatize them so that they're really easy to just plug in the data, and you don't have to, if you don't want to, you don't have to understand all the math behind them.
All
I think
right.
that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.